Joe, Bartel, you've been in enough of these rookie drafts right now. You and I have talked extensively about the laughable mistakes that people make. And when we're not goofing on people, man. I mean, I make the same type of mistakes, but just so far, 10,000 foot view, Dynasty rookie drafts, a lot of them are done, but there's still quite a few leagues that are yet to draft. What's some of the like structural or, not pick specific? What do you think are some of the mistakes people are making so far?
I think for this draft class in particular, and I've said this on a number of platforms, whether it be SiriusXM or the Wednesday NFL podcast that I do with Nick Whalen, I don't recall a time where picks 1 through 12, at least in a Superflex league, if you want to add tight end premium too, I don't recall a time pick 1 through 12 being as equally valuable or close to it in recent memory. Normally there's a fall off at like pick 7 or pick 8 or pick 9 in certain rookies, certain rookie drafts. And you can make the argument that Emeka Buka, Matthew Golden, the double tight end tier, if you're not playing tight end premium, there is a drop in tier after RJ Harvey or Travion Henderson or one of those running backs, but it's not substantial enough. And I think the problem then ends up being for this draft, for this year, because there's value 1 through 12, the mistake is if you are not being flexible and fluid, whether it be trading, understanding what other people may be doing, gathering information in your league, you're doing it wrong. The mistake would be if you're sitting there at pick 3 and saying, I'm going to do this. That's not the right approach.
I mean, like, I'm going to what? Like, I'm going to take Travis Hunter no matter what.
I'm saying whoever is listening to this will have an opinion for pick number 3 for their roster, and that's wrong. Right. Whether it end up being that you need additional receiver help, so you take Travis Hunter, or you're really committed. I have a lot of friends right now. I love Quinshon Judkins, or I love Travion Henderson, one of the hosts. The idea of I'm committed to this process at this pick is the wrong idea. I would be canvassing the entire league. I'd be asking, what do you think is going to happen to pick 4, 5, 6 if they have it? I'm trying to be as active moving up and down this board and get as much value in a first round that I think has more value than ever before. That is the right approach. The wrong approach is to staying pat and making your pick at 3 or at 5 or at 8. You should be doing something, whether it's rebuilding your team, acquiring more picks, committing to get an Amari Hampton, trading up even higher for a Genti. There needs to be action this draft, because there's never been a point 1 through 12 that has valuable spots for every sort of tier or dynasty team or strategy that you might want to have.
Now you're making a good point. I was here's a flex. I had pick 112 in a rookie draft.
Okay, yeah.
I won that league. Wish it was for more money, but it was a $50 league. So I think the payoff was like $300. I'll take it. That pays for a few other $50 leagues. But I'm sitting there at 112. And it's one of those lineup leagues where you have like 3 flexes, like crazy start 12, start 30. It's just bananas, which, by the way, that's a topic for another day. I'm anti-deep league now. I'm more shallow league guy.
Okay.
We'll get into that.
That's a change from last year, but all right.
Exactly. We'll get into it. But at 112, I get Caleb Johnson. I get the presumptive starting running back on the Pittsburgh Steelers, or at least a guy who's, when I say starting, he could be I got 12 touches in my back pocket, right, Joe Bartel?
Oh, a minimum. And I understand that there's the Jalen Warren concern on the split, but if you said Caleb Johnson is more valuable than RJ Harvey, if we liked Caleb Johnson more than Quinshon Judkins, I might disagree, but I don't disagree with the concept. And I'm pretty opinionated. The office here at RotoWire likes to chastise me for being a little bit too vocal and sticking to my opinions at times. And I think I drew a lot of eyebrow raises when we were discussing our RotoWire rookie draft from a couple weeks ago, saying, I don't think there was a wrong choice. Pick 1 through 12. You could trade a first round pick next year, like we had somebody do for RJ Harvey. I don't think that's the wrong idea. If Caleb Johnson falls to 12, that's not a wrong idea. That's why there's so much value. And that's why, again, the only bad decision you can make this year, and it's not always applicable to every draft, this year is staying put with whatever your idea might be for your team that you might need.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Dart, he's gonna get some starts this year, and very minimum, he's gonna get some starts next year, right? Like they didn't draft him in the first round, the New York Giants, to sit him for like 3 years. I mean, that Jordan Love thing, I mean, sure, that's an outcome, like sitting for 3 years, but most likely in this day and age, they're just gonna wait until things go wrong. And I think most people think things will go wrong for the Giants. So point is, you're getting a starting quarterback at the 2.02 in a lot of these drafts. I mean,
absolutely. Well, and you could play it up for Tyler Shuck as well, too, for the Saints. And I think he actually has an even more immediate outcome to be a starting quarterback. And I mentioned this on the SiriusXM show with Jeff Erickson in particular, because he's a Bengals fan. Andy Dalton's probably, before Jalen Hurts, was probably the best case scenario of a second round quarterback and what you could expect for the longevity of the career. If you're taking a Tyler Shuck at the back end of the second round, or even middle second round in Superflex leagues, if you get an Andy Dalton outcome where he is I don't know, at best top 15 quarterback, that's still a windfall from a draft capital perspective, trying to be liquid in that regard. And the same applies to Jackson Dart. I don't know if Dart plays this year with both Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston in tow, but it's certainly possible that if another quarterback injury to go down, somebody else miraculously decides to retire again, like Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign with the Steelers and decides to do whatever he wants to do in ayahuasca land, there could be value for the Giants to trade Jameis Winston. And in that instance, where it's one Russell Wilson injury away, Dart probably does play this season at some point. I agree.
Yeah, and he's a first round draft capital. That's powerful. Even if it's not the top 10, being drafted in the first round, trading away draft capital to get him is still more powerful than even pick 33, right? The Will Levis pick or the Shuck pick, right? Like, you don't feel as the same allegiance to that guy. Like if Spencer Rattler beats out Shuck in training camp, Rattler's the starter. That's it, right? Like,
you're right. Yeah. Well, and I keep interrupting. I apologize, but I always want to push back in the draft capital stuff. I think the last time I was on the show, maybe 2 years ago, we mocked, he's a day 2 pick because he was the last pick in the 3rd round. And then, he's a day 3 pick because he's the 2nd pick in the 4th round. That's ridiculous. And we're talking about like a 3-pick difference. And yet people act like, day 2 capital, it really matters.
So you're right as far as like actual skills, right? Like who the hell, but it's just allegiance, right? It's allegiance and being able to move on.
Right.
Yeah. Commitment from the coaching staff. That's all I mean.
And like Dart was, I think, 15 picks ahead of Tyler Shuck. So in that regard, it isn't that much different. Like if the Saints had a chance to draft Jackson Dart at the back end of the first round, would they have chosen to do it? But I think it's different for quarterbacks and different for trading up in the first round. So I would agree with you. I'm not trying to necessarily argue that point with you.
It's just that they gave up assets to get him, right? It's like, it's insane in our dynasty drafts. Like when last year, I trade a stupid trade. I got off of this podcast with Thor Nystrom and he got me all hyped up about Luke McCaffrey. So not only did I give up like a 3rd and a 4th to go get him. Now he's sitting on the end of my roster and I can't cut him. Right, because I've already pushed in a few extra assets to go get him. Whereas in another league, I had McCaffrey. I got him in the 5th or something. Right. He's been off my roster since like 3 weeks ago. So
if there's anything that I can accomplish doing this podcast with you today, I don't want to be attributed for multiple podcasts to come as Joe Bartel, maybe go get this guy. So I might be the wet blanket on your prospect profile, if nothing else. That might be my job for today.
Yeah, well, if you don't realize by now, Joe, everything I do on this podcast, I'm looking to blame someone else so I don't have to take accountability. So, all right. So we're talking about like the dumbest rookie picks people made, and we're not necessarily talking about players, right? We're not saying, hey, you took Matthew Golden over Ibuka or vice versa. We'll get into that. But just the type of picks. And Joe was talking about it, a couple years ago, Damian Pierce, right? Remember, he goes in pick 10 and he's a 4th round running back. Now, you got a good first year out of him, but process wise, you could argue that's not the best thing. So that's what I want to talk about first. Like, are there certain types of players, profiles, like draft capital baked in, things like that you think are just non-optimal plays? Now, again, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. Like right off the bat, Jaden Blue, the running back drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in round 5, he's getting pushed up now like to the middle of the 2nd round. I guess middle of the 2nd round, you're shooting for upside, but process-wise, I see him going over, like you just said, Tyler Shuck, right? Who's a starting quarterback with 2nd round draft capital. So what do you think are some of like the overall principles that people ignore sometimes that you think are just bad process in these rookie drafts?
So I'm going to answer this differently than all the other dynasty bros that you bring on. And that's why you're going to have me on. Because I have a different thought process than a lot of people. I think they hear that question and go granular and they'll say, Besh for the Raiders, he's not going to be very good. And I actually agree with that. Or conversely, every person you brought on the past month and a half loves Kyle Williams too much. They love Kyle Williams too much.
It's crazy.
Right. That's going to be your new Luke McCaffrey this year. If we want it, you could blame at least 17.
I'm not doing it though. So it's
I'm not trying to say I don't like Kyle Williams or I do. I would answer your question differently. I want to avoid this scenario where I get left with an Anthony Richardson. And that idea is, here was a guy last year. We did a RotoWire startup Dynasty Superflex draft. Richardson was taken 1-6 ahead of Lamar Jackson. And that guy had played maybe 5 games, right? Or put together 5 different games. We were going off the potential. There is a sell high moment for every single player. You talk about it all the time. I think I actually do a really good job of discussing it on the past podcasts, but it's more like what's Will Levis's sell high, or in our case, Tyler Shuck. I want to go even higher than that because there is a sell high for every single player. And I want to avoid the Anthony Richardson scenario. I don't know if these players are players that you should, but I always call it the World War Z phenomenon. And I don't know. Did you read the book? Did you watch the movie? Okay.
Of course.
Good book. Hokey movie. I still love that movie to death. Brad Pitt does a great job.
It's bad good. It's bad good.
Perfect. Yes. The walls of Jerusalem were built to stop the zombies in World War Z. And this is both in the book and the movie because they had a principle of deciders, and you have to be the one detractor of this group of people. There was one detractor. You were forced to be that. That was the role for this person. And the detractor was trying to decide if there were actually like a zombie virus in some sort of African country. Obviously, it ended up being true if you're following along with the movie or watch the whatever else. I want to do that sort of thing for fantasy football, and not enough Dynasty Bros are thinking about that. What is the World War Z principle where we're thinking this could happen? There's a very minute chance. It was the reverse of this with Michael Penix last year, where you and I had off-air conversations. I didn't believe Michael Penix at all would start his rookie season. They signed Kirk Cousins this long deal. I couldn't have been more wrong. That was the World War Z principle in my mind. Anthony Richardson was a top 6 overall Superflex, and now, I don't know, what, top 25 quarterback, maybe even a little bit lower than that, depending on the Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, even throwing Shedeur Sanders or Jalen Milroe in there. It was a massive fall. So if there's a windfall on a player that you got, and I'm going to give a Devon Achane answer, for example, followers of Redraft for me.
Anthony Richardson, QB 27 on consensus Dynasty rankings right now.
There you go. I was bashing Achane a lot in redraft leagues last year. I didn't think you'd stay healthy. Of course, I was wrong. The Dolphins really funneled the offense a lot through Achane, I thought, to the detriment of the offense. This is a diminutive running back who you probably are getting at late second round, early third round Dynasty value, who right now in keep trade cut is running back 5, 6 overall. In a scenario in which the Dolphins say, hey, man, our offense really wasn't that good last year. We could blame it a lot on Tua, but Mike McDaniel, the ever-present offensive coach, could get fired this year if we stink again. I need to do something different. Maybe the answer is don't involve Devon Achane as much. Get Tyreek Hill, get Jalen Waddle involved to that extent. Maybe it's playing more defensively and having more of a ground-oriented attack. There's a lot of different answers. Achane's value can't get higher. There isn't a scenario where Achane is going to be number 1 overall Dynasty running back. So if I'm saying I have this windfall, he is going to be already a multiple first-round running back trade. Shouldn't I be considering that? Shouldn't I World War Z this and say, hey, worst case scenario, if he becomes Anthony Richardson, I'm out significantly following next year.
Right. So let me re-ask the question again, because I don't think you answered it at all.
Okay? Well, no, I'm doing it a different answer. That's all.
Okay. You're answering a different question. So
that's fine.
These rookie drafts, what do you think are some overall guiding principles that you adhere to that maybe you see other people are not adhering to? Is there, I mean, maybe there's not, like, for example, like you talked about how there's so much value at the end of round 1.
Right.
Why the hell would anybody trade up and give up significant assets unless they had a hard player take? So is there anything else? Are there any spots in these drafts? And by the way, I'm
going to mix it back in. I promise. I had a point. We're going to get there eventually.
Yeah. No, we're going around the world across the street.
To World War Z. I don't know. Again, in the first round, if there's a wrong choice, there is a dramatic teardrop. I think after 2-4, 2-5, depending on what you value.
Who's that last player that you like that you said that
for me? It would probably be like Mason Taylor in a tight end premium league, and I'd take Mason Taylor over Luther Burden. I would take him over Kyle Williams. I think Tyler Shuck becomes part of that too. So it's a lot of this receiver class. Last year, Jonathan Brooks was this piece that we all need to get, right? He's the top overall running back in what ended up being a really bad running back class. And everyone knew it was a bad running back class, and yet we pushed up Jonathan Brooks to a certain extent. I was faulty for Trey Benson and Blake
injured
Form.
Too. Jonathan Brooks. He
was injured and then wasn't going to play half the season, even in his rookie year.
Well, that's my point. Like, we pushed that guy up. Like, that's how desperate we were for running backs, right?
In a bad running back class. And I think we can just acknowledge, man, just wasn't a good running back class. I shouldn't be prioritizing that. What we're doing right now is the same thing with receivers. Whether it be Kyle Williams, again, I'm not trying to say I don't like Kyle Williams or I do. It's Ted McMillan and it's sometimes Travis Hunter, depending on what format you play, and then throw your hands up. Like, you could talk about Ibuka, we talk about Matthew Golden. they are first round capital receivers. But typically in leagues that are starting 3 receivers, you need more people to jump up. I don't think the answer is a early second round Kyle Williams. I don't think the answer is a mid second round Jack Besh. And I don't want people to make the same mistake of here's Jonathan Brooks 2.0 in a bad receiver class. That would be the one mistake that I'm seeing right now when there's a tier of 15 players that are good, and everything else after that I think is pretty equal.
So let me ask. So let's get back into the first round of these rookie drafts a little bit, because you made me think of something when you're talking about like these sell high moments on veteran players like Achane and Anthony Richardson. Let's say you do need a player, right? A positional player. So when you're in rookie drafts, Joe, and you're like, the Cam Ward thing is really what's coming to my mind here, right? Like Cam Ward, in my mind, should be the second pick in a Superflex rookie draft, right? Because he's a quarterback. Quarterbacks have the most value. Even if he doesn't have a great season, the 101s generally have, insulated value for at least an extra year or two.
Right.
So do you draft, if you need a quarterback, are you just taking Cam Ward, or are you just give me value in the draft and trade for need after?
If you need a quarterback, you definitely should. Can I play the inverse example, which was one that we saw in the RotoWire draft? You have 14 quarterbacks on your 30-man roster. Now, it's a dumb decision because you think you're going to trade to a bunch of simpletons, all your backup quarterbacks.
No. Hold on a second. So let me explain this there.
Okay,
I think,
all right.
Let's go right here. So in the league you're referring to, right? Like I'm rostering a ton of backup quarterbacks, literally 10 of them, right? Mm-hmm. It's because I don't have a quarterback too. Right. Like I traded for Geno at the end of the year just to plug a hole, but I have I forget who I have, either like Josh Allen, and I literally have nobody else. So it's very similar. The strategy I'm using is very similar to what we used to use, like for running back, like draft your anchor running back and then just load up on like 10 upside running backs. Right. And then like, hopefully in week 3, I could use this guy. So that's what I'm hoping to happen. Not necessarily so much to trade these guys. I will do it, right? I mean, what's the most I'm going to get? A 3rd round pick if Trey Lance gets to start, I mean, that's the best case. But what am I going to get for Browning, right? A 4th if the guy that has Joe Burrow needs him and is still in contention in that week. It's such a small needle to thread.
Exactly.
Right. It's more about, if I'm in my draft structure, if I'm going to take a QB1 like Josh Allen and then almost ignore the position, or if I had Matt Stafford or something and I had an injury, then I'm just going to have 7 or 8 of those guys and hope that the week that I need a QB 2 or 3, Marcus Mariota gets a spot start. Andy Dalton, takes over for Bryce Young for a week while he gets his head. So I'm just trying to plug that spot. I have, again, maybe a year or 2 ago, I had delusions of grandeur that I was going to trade these guys for seconds. It ain't happening. Only because, by the way, the window to trade these guys, they have to be a contending team.
Yeah.
The other player, they have to need a quarterback in that contending window, and I have to be willing to sell it. And, so it's more about just plugging that hole.
Yeah, you also have J.J. McCarthy in this league, and it's Geno Smith, J.J. McCarthy, and Josh Allen, and Deshaun Watson technically, but he also
right. That's what I'm saying. I had Watson and McCarthy in that league, so that was the strategy.
You're still currently rostering 7 quarterbacks, though. And we had a discussion about your pick 1-8, and you have been, I think, correct on saying Jackson Dart needs to be valued higher than what the Dynasty consensus is saying.
We went ahead of me,
and no, Dart went 2-1 in this draft. And you chose not to take Dart because you had too many quarterbacks. And my thought was, well, if 5 of these guys are just cuttable things anyway, like, do you really have 2 quarterbacks? And I'm not saying Allen is not correct or not correct dynasty wise, but I'm just pointing out there are situations that even if you do have 3 quarterbacks, taking Cam Ward, who has insulated value at 1-1 overall, is totally fine in my mind. Now, I would ideally not want my 3 quarterbacks to be Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, right? Like that would be an insane stack. But if you have, I don't know, Geno, Matthew Stafford, and then one of those top guys, one of those top 7 or 8, you have 2 starters probably for at least 2 years, but there needs to be some sort of projection afterwards. And that's why I think canvassing, going back to the very initial question, what are people doing wrong? I want to have intel on all 11 members of my league. Somebody in the chat was saying it's hard to trade down because everyone's fine waiting for that. You don't know. I'm saying, like, you need to be talking to every single person in your league. Now, you might not be able to do that, Alan, in your experts draft that has Travis Hunter going 1-6 overall because he's silly.
Right.
So some experts are going to do, but I'm just saying people who are listening to this are typically, I would assume, playing in their friends and family dynasty leagues, some competitive work one, whatever else. You're able to have conversations that are not, here's a fantasy expert talking to another fantasy expert. So communicating as to what your needs will be, what are their needs, and what they're thinking in the draft. That's how you can be flexible and fluid through 1 through 12.
Yeah. All right. Just want to let everybody know the RotoWire Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast is sponsored by Circa Las Vegas. I'm Alan Seslowsky along with RotoWire's Joe Bartel. Joe, we've been out to Circa many times for, the RotoWire trip. We've been out there for invited by Circa. I mean, very briefly, most people watching this have either heard of Circa.
Mm-hmm.
They are running right now the ultimate draft experience, which if you want to get your league out there for free, basically that they'll, you fly out, they'll pick you up in a limo and you do your draft by the cabana. We have drafted together by the cabana.
It's great.
Yeah. I mean, give me a 1 through 10 rating on that.
14.
Yeah.
I don't think it can be contained into the 1 through 10 atmosphere. Absolutely not.
And why? What about drafting by the cabana pool at Circa Las Vegas do you like?
So we're based in Madison, Wisconsin. At the time when we normally go to Vegas, it's going to be like 90 and then 112 degrees in humidity. Like it's worse. You in Florida would probably be the same thing. Going to Vegas, it's still warm, but it's the dry heat and you can have your feet in the pool. Watching any sort of sport you could possibly have. I always make the argument that even if I was not to be sponsored or we're partnered in any sort of way, I want to be there for the combo of week 1 of the NFL season and that week 2 or whatever they call it for college football on Saturday and Sunday. There will literally never be a better place or time to experience football to that capacity than at Circus Stadium Swim, sitting in the pool, watching with other geeks like myself who are just excited to watch football, be a part of it.
I mean,
and
who doesn't want to be
draft there.
Yeah, who doesn't want to be in a pool with you?
Well, I thought you were going to say don't call me a geek, Alan.
No. I'm saying who doesn't want to be in a pool with Joe Bartel? I mean, yeah, but
there's probably plenty of people, but yes.
In the links in the video description below, it's Circa Las Vegas Stadium Swim Ultimate Draft giveaway. Sign up, it's free. You get your league flowing out there. You can do your draft out there. And then also want to let everybody know right now, RotoWire, if you want to get behind the paywall, all our Dynasty content, if you love fantasy baseball, there's tons there, basketball, but we are ramping up with all our new tools, mock draft simulators, there's a million things. You can go to RotoWire for free right now. But if you want to get more and unlock the paywall, any subscription you want 15% off, rotowire.com, code YouTube15. That's code YouTube15, or there's a direct link in the video description. 15% off any RotoWire product. Again, I'm here with Joe Bartel from RotoWire. I think one of our the most passionate Dynasty guy. You and I, we have a lot of Dynasty conversations, and we love talking strategy, right? Yeah. So, I titled this podcast "Dumbest Rookie Picks People Making," and I really didn't want to get too player takey on it, but who's a player? We'll do it once because I know there's guys that you certainly said you like the first round, but who's a player in the rookie drafts you've seen so far where it's just like every time they're taken, you're just like, thank God it's not even going to be an option. So basically, not a player that's bad, but someone that you just don't want to draft. You think it's a dumb pick.
I think it's Trey Harris for the Chargers.
That's a good one.
I understand the concept for it. Quentin Johnston's not a thing. There needs to be a second receiver. If we think Justin Herbert's good, and I do, there has to be somebody else that develops. So maybe it's Gadsden, that tight end who they drafted in the 3rd round. I don't really think that's the case. And I think people are kind of off on the overall assessment of the Chargers offense. But Trey Harris will play, which in a redraft perspective is the right answer. I mean, Trey Harris could get opportunities and we'll get plenty because Quentin Johnston is not going to be a factor in that offense. And Lab McConkey can't be the only one, as we saw last year when he fell off due to injury. So I think Trey Harris is going to get plenty of playing time. And by default, as a mid-second round pick, you're fine with it. What's going to be the ceiling for Trey Harris, though? In the similar vein as what can be liquid for Tyler Shuck, who I'd take ahead of him. I think Mason Taylor, to a certain extent, for the Jets as well, too, as a tight end, can be more liquid if certain circumstances play well. Trey Harris will never be the number 1 receiver for the Chargers. Trey Harris really wasn't the top option on plays other than a deep go ball or a screenplay in college. And I think there are instances to point out that Trey Harris doesn't have a lot of advanced metrics from you guys talked about it last week, but the breakout age baloney stuff, and now being a pushback on that, there's not a lot of advanced dynasty analytics, I'll call it that way, that would support Trey Harris being worth. And I think this is overall people just pushing up. There aren't many receivers from this class that are very good. Again, the Kyle Williams example, Trey Harris falls in that mold. I think Besh as well too for the Raiders. I also don't really care for Luther Burden, but that's a separate conversation altogether. So Trey Harris is probably the right answer on the I'm happy when he is gone because I don't have to worry about taking him.
All right, couple things there, and let's address these, right? Because I know these are the questions I would have. So the three players that go after Trey Harris, I want to know if you would take Trey Harris or those players, right? Because you're picking him at the 17th overall rookie in most of these drafts. So, it's not about, it's about what's after. Cam Scattaboo or Harris?
I would take Scattaboo in most instances. Yep.
Okay. Lightning round. Jack Besh or Harris?
Harris.
Okay. We know you take Mason Taylor over Harris, right?
Yep.
And then how about Kyle Williams?
I would take Kyle Williams over him too.
Okay. So Harris, you don't like because he always goes ahead of those guys.
Yeah. And I mean, does Shuck end up going behind them too? Like, would Shuck be pushed up in this?
Oh, yeah. Tyler Shuck is like, he's like in that 211, 3-1 range.
I would take Tyler Shuck as well too over Trey.
Okay.
Harris.
Okay. Well, you know what? And that's fair. Right. It's okay. That makes sense. And then the other thing you had said, and then Bashal Tutin as well, by the way.
I think I would go Trey Harris in that instance instead. I'm not convinced Bashal Tutin is going to be a contributor for even past 3 years.
Yeah. Wow. Bashal. Okay. Because I had a different view on Tutin, but we can get into that. But you had also said about breakout age being baloney. I'm with you there a little bit, right? Like there's I guess it's not a bad thing to have, but it wouldn't draw. I mean, I had Addison Hayes on last week, and he still believes in. And by the way, the consensus market seems to be moving away from breakout age. And for anyone, I'm sure everyone watching this podcast knows, we're talking about the age where a player breaks out in college was commonly correlated to having NFL success. The earlier their age breakout, the more likely they are to have success. Now it seems like the dynasty market and the tape watching bros seem to have abandoned that a little bit. It seems like you've completely abandoned it. Before you crap on that and say why it's bad, what was the case that you think that people that valued breakout age with rookies were making? Even if you don't believe in it, what was like the case they were making? And then I want you to crap on it.
Oh, I'm going to give you a very cynical answer, which is probably not fair. The case was it's an easy answer to the test. That's what we're all looking for. Okay, what can I plug into my model? And I'm not knocking anybody that was on the show before using models, but what can I plug into my model that will say this guy could be good? Then I could talk about them. And I don't think it at all represents what circumstances happened in past years. I don't think it really takes into account circumstances that happened for that prospect themselves. That we can mock the tape bros. There are even times where a player can be do well in a certain game that you're watching, and you could say, well, yeah, it's because the defender was drunk last night staying out. Like there are so many circumstances that
real man
into this. Right. Now we're getting to a different kind of podcast. No, I never like data that automatically tries to tell you what is right or wrong. And it's unfortunate because I think in today's world, we're really getting to the No Man podcast. Today's world, we're all looking for that. We all want to have the easiest correct answer most often in time. And that's what a model is for. You can sell that. It's very easy to go ahead and talk about. When in reality, there are circumstances, situations that change every single time. I go back, like Trey Harris on paper, given the playing time, the draft capital invested, there's going to be a lot of people that convince themselves of that. When I watch that guy play football, I don't think he looks all that good. And I can't envision a scenario in the Greg Roman offense. That is subjective. Greg Roman is not the coach of every single person in these models, for example. It's not Lab McConkey taking up all these different targets. So it's a cynical answer because I know why in the business, especially for us working at RotoWire, why we do those things. But it allows people to get lazy isn't even the right word because I don't think people are deliberately being lazy.
You're saying it's like it's a correlate, like, hey, if A, then B. It makes sense to their brain, right? Like I see a lot of guys breaking out at 17 and a half, 18 years old, and they've had success, right?
So therefore, this person will. Right. It's the predictive part that bothers me more.
Right. It's more descriptive than it is predictive, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't know if there'll ever be a true predictive model that I actually believe, whether it works or not. Yeah. There is always going to be the next time where a player comes up and like, well, X, Y, and Z circumstance is different than these other ones in this model. And therefore I'm not trusting that, but other people might. And it becomes more of like a snake oil pitch type of deal. That's my biggest concern from a dynasty perspective. Like, there are really, really knowledgeable people who have been doing this a long time that might say Luke McCaffrey is going to be a good receiver. And then you buy the snake oil.
Right.
That's not on that person.
That's a player take.
But that's not on the person for pitching it. It's for you. And I'm not knocking Allen. That's on you for not kind of thinking through what are the World War Z scenarios that could be applying even as a rookie coming out. And again, I'm in the industry. I play dynasty leagues all the time. I'm competitive with people that we have in these dynasty leagues. Like, I'm just cynical with it, and maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe it's a Joe Bartel problem overall.
Yeah, I mean, well said. Well said. I mean, so what you're saying is that you trust your eyes, right? Like and that's what I think. Sometimes the people
Right.
that don't trust their eyes or just they're not they need the data in order to come to the conclusion. And I think that like I could look at a bunch of data and and not be able to analyze it the same way. It's because I trust what I see. I'm watching the games, so maybe it's just different ways. Like I know sometimes you can look and see that a guy had 2 catches for 38 yards, and you look at a box score and then the whatever underlying metrics didn't back it up, the air yards or whatever, but you're watching the game, you're like, he was open. The quarterback just overthrew him.
Right.
Like that's a player that's going to, I want to get now because next week it's so easy to see that quarterback is looking for him. He could have. So it's trusting your eyes versus trusting the data. But yeah, the whole thing of Breakout Age is very interesting. I never really, any of those like, alphabet soup metrics, I don't really buy into. And like you said, because I trust my eyes is the bottom line.
Well, this is going to be a tangent to a really interesting conversation, but the Breakout Age is going to really play out in 2 years. Because you have Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams of Alabama, who almost got 1,000 receiving yards as a 17-year-old for Alabama. And then Jeremiah Smith, who continues in a long lineage of really, really good Ohio State players. Both are going to be available in that 2027 draft. And smart people right now are thinking about what to do. Like it's entirely possible that even if the Superflex draft is deep, those 2 players will go 1 and 2, and then it's the quarterback. Whenever running back du jour in 2027 ends up being like, that's the level of prospect. There was the Jackson Smith, the Jigba hype as a rookie early on. Jordan Addison was having that a little bit. I'm sorry, not as a rookie in his first year in college, and Jordan Addison was having that as well too. It is not to the same degree as Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, and that they're both on the college football cover as well too. It's just going to add more. So the fuel to the fire as to what 2027 is going to look like is really, really interesting to me. And I think goes to that Breakout Age point. Like I can just watch Ryan Williams play and think, man, that guy is really good. Doesn't matter that he's 17. It's incredible that he is doing this at 17. And the same goes for Jeremiah Smith.
All right. I want to talk about rookies that have the clearest path to volume, right? And we could get player specific, but this is where I think there's some problems in rookie drafts, right? Like Amari and Hampton seems to be going, even in Superflex drafts, as the 102. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. He's a first-round running back, right? You may or may not like Najee Harris, but the guy, just doesn't miss games. He's certainly a ceiling capper. And it looks like that there's a very good chance J.K. Dobbins is coming back. And again, it's not like we're worried about J.K. Dobbins, but that's somebody that can credibly earn a role. And now we're looking at a little bit of a blockage in the short term for Amari and Hampton, right? So I guess which of the rookies do you think has the clearest path to year 1 production? Because it seems like we're starting to play Dynasty now in shorter and shorter windows. We're almost playing like a redraft version of Dynasty, Joe.
It's either RJ Harvey or Caleb Johnson.
Which, by the way, are available in the back half
correct.
of every freaking
That's why
draft.
I'm saying, like, this is talking about 1 through 12 is absolutely insane. And people who are fading RJ Harvey make complete sense. It's a 24-year-old running back, right? Converted quarterback turned running back.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I
didn't know that.
It that's why he's 24. It took him a little bit to get there. Obviously, a dynamic player, was involved in the offense heavily. You could kind of point to the quality of competition that he was playing in. I don't have those concerns because when I watch RJ Harvey, and this is not just here are the YouTube highlights. I'm not knocking people who do that, by the way. I think there's only so much that you can do. We don't have the tape access to the NFL people and the college people do, but like watching.
I'm team YouTube highlights and then drafting that player. So I'm no shame at all.
Even you could search RJ Harvey touches week 5, and there are now YouTube videos of that. So it doesn't have to just be highlights necessarily. I did that for Trayvon Henderson's pass blocking. I still think it's a different conversation. He's a really good pass blocking running back. Anyway,
clear path to volume.
Year 1, our RJ Harvey is going to be a difference maker. And I push back. I want to do the World War Z thing. Not every single Sean Payton running back will always be a top 5 fantasy asset, right? At some point he will miss just by rule of averages, right? It can't be that Sean Payton is impervious to this. But man, his track record is really, really good with these guys.
Oh, you're talking about like Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara.
I mean, even Reggie Bush as well too. Like utilizing those guys as well. Pierre Thomas. Yeah, I mean, like
He turned Tim Hightower into a thing.
Just Sean Payton knows what to do with a certain archetype of running back. And if he, who very much seems like the brains of the Broncos operation, has identified this guy, then even if it is only 18 touches for RJ Harvey, we're talking about consequential volume, but also in a situation that makes him more fantasy relevant than a lot of people. At the moment, I think he's like a 6th round redraft ADP. I'll pay that every single time. And that's sort of the answer to the question. Caleb Johnson's going a little bit even later in redraft and later in Dynasty. And I think you can very obviously say Caleb Johnson will just repeat Najee Harris and Jalen Warren will just be Jalen Warren. But Caleb Johnson can also do the pass catching work too. Like, what you want in the NFL right now in the year 2025 is to be flexible. This is what you hear all the time when defense coaches talk. You want to be flexible and different personnel out there. To answer that, you need to be flexible offensively. I can't just walk out of tell saying, oh, man, here's Najee Harris going for 4 carries for 6 yards. Right. Caleb Johnson can be all of that, and Jalen Warren can be all of that. So I think both of those guys, RJ Harvey and Caleb Johnson, are going to be set for volume right away. Yeah,
I would say that I would take RJ Harvey over Murray and Hampton in redraft setting, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a good bet, especially in the month of September, which, you can't just punt 4 games in redraft. Murray and Hampton might be on the lower end of the committee. Now, of course, there's major upside. I understand why people take them at the 102 in rookie drafts, but man, is there more risk to that than, they're buying the profile, which is the right thing to do, right? Your first round running back, those are gold. We don't usually get those, except we've gotten them a lot lately. Bijan, Gibbs, Etienne.
Those are higher first round picks and therefore even more insulated from a draft capital perspective. I made the case pre-draft that worst case scenario for Murray and Hampton is Najee Harris. And then I don't know if he's as gifted as a pass catching running back as some people tend to assume, although now going to the Chargers, well, he's definitely doing that role over Najee Harris. Not that Harris can't do that, but he's definitely doing it. And even J.K. Dobbins, like if I don't know if the intel is wrong necessarily, Alan, but I don't know if it's a guarantee just because the Chargers offer that unique contract that Dobbins is back. It just more allows them to get some sort of compensatory play in the event that he signs somewhere else. It does not mean that he is a guaranteed signing back to the Chargers. I don't actually think he returns to LA. I think he'll go someplace else. Much in the same way Elijah Moore, who got a similar contract, ended up going to the Bills pretty much directly after that was assigned. So the Amari and Hampton thing, if you're drafting him in Dynasty at 1-2, I have no issue with. And if the floor is Najee Harris, you probably don't either. It's not sexy. It's not 1-2 value. But if that's the floor of Amari and Hampton, you can work with that.
Yeah. When we talk about the dumbest rookie picks that everyone is making, it makes me think of like these dynasty rules that people have, right? Like we hear it on social media. We watch a lot of video podcasts and never do this or always do that.
Right.
Is there a specific rule that you just think is the dumbest thing? And again, when I say a rule, it's just like general things. And like, I'll give you something for me while you're thinking it through. You know me, I don't do show sheets. I just throw questions at you. I think that like drafting solely on age is a very dumb thing, right?
Sure.
Like there's exploitable thing. Like I have a lot of Saquon Barkley, Mike
Derrick
Evans
Henry.
on my, Derrick Henry. I traded a 1st round pick last year in the middle of the season for Derrick Henry. Everyone's like, oh my God, a 30 whatever year old running back. Now he just signs a new contract. I got 3 years out of him. I'm probably going to get more production out of Derrick Henry in this 2.5 season than someone's going to get out of Caleb Johnson in 5, right? I mean, it's Derrick damn Henry.
Can I pause you real quick? Because that's exactly the model thing I'm talking about. There is no model built to understand what Derrick Henry can do in the modern era of football. So it might make sense that every other 29-year-old or 30 running back would fall off. They're not Derrick Henry. Yeah. So, I mean, like, it makes complete sense. I want to let you keep going, but that's the exact thing I'm pointing out is that you can't build models or just assume things when there are different types of talent like that or Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, it's our former colleague Chris Liss says, never cross a river on a horse that is on average 4 feet deep, right? Because on average it's 4 feet deep, but if it's like an inch deep right when you walk in, it's like 40 feet deep in the middle. So you have to look for outliers. So so what are some of these draft rules? I almost ignore age to a fault. I'm buying these, Mike Evans type. So what is a dynasty rule that you just think is a dumb thing that you ignore?
The 1st round draft capital receiver. I truly think that
Explain. What do you mean by that?
So there are circumstances. I think about Brandon Ayuk, which I think you might have talked about in one of the podcasts or somewhere similar. We're talking about now 5 years ago. That was the Justin Jefferson draft. That was CeeDee Lamb. That was Jerry Jeudy. There was Brandon Ayuk was pick 31. He is a 1st round receiver. Xavier Worthy is a first-round receiver, but the idea of Xavier Worthy being any more different in a value perspective than Keon Coleman, who was 2 picks later in the second round, I think is asinine. I don't agree with that idea that first-round draft capital is the be-all, end-all. If Emeka Ibuka was picked 31, I'm not viewing that as first-round capital. I'm viewing as this team got a good value on a player, but it's not first-round capital receiver. We get too caught up on the draft capital overall. That might be my just total answer. But first-round draft capital receiver, it doesn't always play out. Jordan Addison right now, is there ever going to be a point in the next 3 years, 4 years, where he is the number one receiver for a team?
Oh,
No, but we're viewing him as this incredible asset in part college-wise because he was really productive his freshman year.
Zay Flowers is in that group too.
Well, and you could argue Zay Flowers at least has a more obvious trajectory to be the number one target.
But he's never going to be a top 12 receiver in Dynasty.
Not when Lamar Jackson is being Lamar Jackson,
right?
But like Justin Jefferson is literally there. There is never going to be a point where Jordan Addison is getting more targets than Justin Jefferson over the next 3 or 4 years. Why are we viewing Jordan Addison as like a top 20 Dynasty asset necessarily? He can produce. There's a safety net for it. It's the Najee Harris floor of receivers. I get all that. But it's first round draft capital, a lot of hype college-wise, and then a good offense. That does not equal the payoff of A.J. Brown, for example, who ends up being at some points like a top 7, top 6 Dynasty asset. And I look at that a little bit with Ted McMillan. I don't know if the Bryce Young offense will ever be able to generate a top 15 Dynasty receiver, even though we might be viewing him that way. And Ted McMillan is being drafted way earlier. So like there's a bit of that thought in my mind too. But if this receiver class is weak, like we sort of seem to assume, isn't everyone at risk of being a Jonathan Brooks to the receiver class this year? And that's what makes me a little bit concerned.
Yeah, no, that's a good take there, Joe Bartel. The 2 tight ends that have first round draft capital, Tyler Warren and Colston Lovelin, right? Now, this is a tricky one. Let's just talk a small tight end premium, right? Like a lot of leagues that I play in, I'm sure many people that they're either full PPR or 1.5 PPR. I know, listen, we play in a ton of 1.75 and 2.0. It's a different conversation, but nobody wants these tight ends in round 1. Like, so I guess tight end is so hard unless you have McBride or Bowers. Like you almost like going from tight end Laporta.
Really interesting, right? Because those are 2 pretty young tight ends that were drafted in the last 3 rounds, and you would think history would swing the pendulum the other way. Yeah, I know I got burned by Kyle Pitts, but look what Brock Bowers did last year, and man, it only took a couple of years. But Trey McBride is really good. There's the Kincaid one's really that's a great. Sam Laporta is also in that Dynasty tight end mix as well too, as a top 5 or 6 one. I would have thought, given the talent level, the discussion certainly of Tyler Warren, but to a certain extent Colston Lovelin from all the NFL draft community, that there would be more hype in that regard. And I know I've heard some of your podcasts mention Colston Lovelin already as a top 5 Dynasty tight end. There are some people. Hold
on. Stop there. Do you know where he is on the consensus tight end rankings right now?
I think Laporta will go ahead of him. I think McBride. I think Bowers. So we're saying Lovelin, right? Not Warren.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lovelin, I think is 5.
He's tight end 4 in the consensus ranking. So it's not that people are saying, they're just putting him there because he's young and he has first round draft capital.
And it's attached to Ben Johnson. So like if
that's fair.
If this was Alan Seslowsky drafting Colston Lovelin 10 overall, we might have some reservations. I think you would be a very good head coach, Alan.
Or if he went to the Jets, right? Like if he went to the Jets in the first round.
I love Mason Taylor, but it was in part because he's a lot cheaper from a draft. If I'm wrong on Mason Taylor.
You want to take a guess where he is in consensus, Taylor? Mason Taylor? This is the overall Dynasty consensus rankings.
He will be behind Tucker Kraft.
Just give me a number. Tight end what?
12.
He's tight end 14. So you're in range, which we know tight end 8 through 20 is more or less the same, right? It's whoever scores the touchdown that year. Right. So we're just sticking those tight ends in there, Warren and Lovelin at 4 and 5 because they're young. Like they're ahead of Kittle. We know George Kittle's going to outscore both of them over the next 2 years, right? I mean, that's like a 90% bet.
In a tight end premium league, it's possible Lovelin gets more targets. I don't know if it happens in year 1, but gets more targets. And Kittle being injury prone is also a little bit of a concern too. I agree.
Is it a dumb pick? Is it a dumb pick to take those guys?
No. I will not allow that to be attributed to my name at all in this podcast. Absolutely not. I'm nervous more about Warren than I am Loveland. I don't think the Bears make that commitment to Loveland unless they have some sort of plan for him right away. That's a big investment to be like, hey, new head coach, offensive mastermind, wonder kid sort of dude. We are making the 10th overall pick despite having a need for tackle, pass rusher in an offensive class that wasn't good overall, just universally across the board. Quarterback, running back, quarterback, receiver, tight end, all was bad by NFL draft pundits. Lovelin's going to be picked number 10 over Warren, of all people, who was widely projected to be number 1 overall. That was a flag plant by Ryan Poles, and that was a flag plant by Ben Johnson too. So no, I don't think it's a bad pick. I don't know if I view him as tight end 4, but nobody would have viewed Trey McBride as a tight end 2 potential when he was even drafted. I mean,
he wasn't. He
right,
was
that's
like,
what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
So,
like we're putting these guys there before they even do it. We've seen a million. You just named it. We've gone down the list of round 1 tight ends that have died for fantasy. Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, OJ Howard, Eric Ebron. I mean, we can go down the list of old and new. It's a bad bet. And then to take him over George Kittle in Dynasty League, it just feels like you're drafting at 110 in your rookie draft. Why the hell are you passing on a running back, or even though it's a round 3 running back? I mean, it's a real, again, I don't know if it's the right or wrong decision. It just seems like it seems like a dumb pick.
Bad process is kind of what I call it. And this is what this podcast has become is discussing the process of things. In a startup Dynasty draft, I'm just not going to be taking a tight end at all very high. I mean, like, one could you get TJ Hawkinson, who is actually a pretty good first round pick, but
pick 85, tight end 7.
I would take TJ Hawkinson over a lot of these situations. I would imagine, we never mentioned, where is Loveland and Warren in the startup Dynasty conversation? Are they like 2 full rounds ahead of Hawkinson and Kittle?
Pick 66. What is that?
Yeah, 17 picks, right? 77 for Hawkinson, 60.
Give me the math. So what?
That would be a round and a half difference.
And then 70 for Warren. 66 and 70 respectively. So what is that? Yeah. What round is that? Like,
it's at least around
6 or 7.
Yeah, it'd be round 5, late round 5, early 6 for Loveland. No, yeah.
Just so you know, Joe is way smarter at head math than me. There's people yelling in the radio right now.
I'm actually not confident in that answer, but I promise I'm smarter with math than that might.
Nobody wants to do that math. No, people are just yelling, "Hey, SIRI." I don't say the word because then every device will like, bling, So
I suppose that's true. You have that at your fingertips, your voice command.
Joe, we're gonna finish up in a few minutes, but before we go, we still have a few topics to cover. I just want to let everybody know, if you love Joe Bartel like I do, I think Joe is great. He does his own show on Saturdays on SiriusXM. Was it 1 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah,
1 p.m. Eastern. It's called Angel Fire Radio. Talks about all different sports. Always has fun takes and just a talented broadcaster. And then during the offseason on the RotoWire football only channel, he does a podcast with our own Nick Whalen, just talking about the season, all the long form topics. They can stretch their arms out a little bit and get into it. And then obviously he's our go-to waiver wire guy. I love the way you do the waiver wire. You know what? Let's real quick here. Since you're a waiver wire guy, we're in these super deep Dynasty leagues. What do you think is a couple waiver wire strategies for Dynasty that you could advise people as far as like spending their, very little on the waiver wire in these deep Dynasty leagues?
Yeah.
Let's just say on 100% budget, is it like the minute someone with a pulse comes up, just blow it? I mean, how do you play the waiver wire in Dynasty leagues?
That's a really good question. I think it's so tough because I would want to know 5 different settings requirements. I had a friend that did
Superflex,
Well, I'll play this out a couple scenarios. I had a friend that is not in a Superflex league. It was only 4-round draft. So a Jalen Milroe ended up being available from that. And you think about, right, Milroe in your Superflex leagues is pretty conventionally a top 24 selection, top 28. That person, you could only have 4 quarterbacks on their roster across all 12 teams. Well, at a certain point, it's either you go, I have 3 quarterbacks I like, or here's this golden ticket. Like, it ended up being a really valuable thing in my mind. I'm buying a 3rd round pick, which I thought what Jalen Milroe's value would be for a certain amount of FAAB. And that it was $200. And I said, go ahead and put down 70. I made the mistake of not going 72 because
he didn't get him.
No, he ended up being like 74. And that was,
I have this conversation with Jeff Erickson all the time.
Yes.
Stop being a cheap Stop being a cheap fuck on the waiver wire. Spend 15% more than you think you should.
Absolutely not a cheap thing. In my mind, it was, I like round numbers. When I'm going to get gas, I'll either end at a 0 or a 5 every time.
That's the wrong way to.
I'm aware, Alan. Yeah. I was told by my friend how very wrong I was. And he ended up getting Tyler Shuck, which was fine because the Dart was also available in this scenario. It was single quarterback where you can only roster 4 for every 12 teams. I think there are circumstances that you you can look at your roster and, more importantly, look at everybody else's roster and say, is this golden ticket valuable to a certain extent? I think about this is not a rookie player, but Kareem Hunt would have likely been available all of last year on every roster. Is the World War Z circumstance going to make this guy be a really competitive asset for my team? And if you are not going to be competitive that year, it doesn't matter. But then in that instance, there's probably half the league, maybe 40% of the league that's iced out of that, and Kareem Hunt becomes a little bit cheaper. You can do that with a lot of veterans, but when it comes to the rookies, there's every sort of archetype and team that will need a rookie no matter what. Even my friend in a single quarterback league who doesn't need tight ends should have been going for the golden ticket of Jalen Milroe. And that's why the premium ended up being what it was. I was wrong on how much to put, because you're right, I was a cheap SOB. But I like...
Always spend more. I
think it matters a lot as to what your team context is and everyone else in that league too.
Yeah, I'd say blow the FAAB when you can. Be highly speculative, and especially in a league where you can make $0 bids and just have first come, first serve after waivers runs. I mean, that's kind of like my overall philosophy. Plus, FAAB just feels like I just don't want it. It's like burning a hole in my pocket.
That's a lazy take. That's
well, that's what I'm saying. I'd rather just, I'd rather just get, because obviously if you get the guys that you want early in the season, right? If they hit, you have them for the whole season, right? Like if there's a right now in redraft, Joe, there's going to be players that nobody talks about all season, that nobody drafts, and they're literally available in 95% of leagues that everyone's going to want their money. That's what I'm saying. So just spend it on that guy. Elijah Mitchell in week 1 ends up getting 15 carries and has 2 touchdowns. He's the week 1, put all your money in. Right now, he's not going to be drafted. I'm sure he's been cut in a lot of dynasty leagues. Right. I mean, nobody wants him. They're making room for like rookies like Ty Felton. You know what I'm saying?
Or the Cowboys, Phil Mata, whatever.
Phil Maffa, right? Yeah,
Maffa,
that's a great example. What if Phil Maffa just pushes Javonte Williams and Jaden Blue out of the way, right?
I absolutely like buying in those scenarios, especially at the running back position. I think the attrition rate for that, and if you're speculating now at the end of May as to what can change in 3 months, especially at that position, totally fine. I would not do what you're doing and having 6 quarterbacks rostered on your team, hoping that I can get a 3rd round lottery pick. I would rather play that out for the Phil Maftas of the world for the running back. Like if you have a 30-man roster and I'm committing 10 positions to the running back position, that might seem like a lot, but that could play off, I think, far more significantly and require less circumstances to be liquid, like we were discussing with the quarterbacks earlier with those running backs.
Yeah, no, I said it earlier. I won't circle back, but the reason I have those QBs is because I really don't have a QB2, and I'm just kind of hoping that it lines up. I mean, depends.
I'm not chastising. I'm saying we hear that I'm going to corner the quarterback market. That was a very popular draft strategy. Like
QB hoarding.
Thank you, QB hoarding. I couldn't think of the name of it. Fine, and I don't really agree with it in redraft. Dynasty, I understand to a certain extent, but you could apply that to a position that's far more volatile in running back. I think that's why you don't do it.
But QB hoarding is not that. QB hoarding, Joe, is like say you have the 101, you take Josh Allen,
right,
and then it comes back on round 2, and you take Bo Nix, and then you come back in round 3 and you take Baker Mayfield, and then you come in round 4 and you take Tua, right? So now, and then you take a position player. So then you take Geno in round 5, right? Like whatever it is, 6. So now you've cornered the quarterback market, but what happens is if the league is like, screw you, we're just not going to, yeah. So, I mean, it might take 2 or 3 years, but at some point, somebody going to come a knocking, right?
Or the league folds because he pissed off everybody. That's a thing that we don't really discuss enough with those. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to the very first thing I said in the show is I think information is really, really valuable in your league, whether we're playing with experts, which is harder to get, or your friends and family league. You might as well call me Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, where I'm going to be talking to a lot of people, understanding what you're going to be doing, what you're valuing, what you're prioritizing, because I can then use that because I listen to so many podcasts, because I talk to you all the time via DMs, and I guess I was going to say annoy you, but that's fine. It probably is the case.
Don't annoy
whatever.
You.
All that's like I'm
not more than anyone else, at least.
I'm consuming this to a certain extent, and I think the same thing would apply. If you are the information guy in your league, you are in a very valuable spot, and that doesn't require you to be actually good at setting lineups or picking players or anything else. When you have more information than everyone else in the league, you are in a better chance to win.
Yeah. The only argument I make is like everyone has all this damn information. Information used to be a commodity. It's like now it's like, the most casual of my friends will be like, oh, did you hear Phil Maffa's the third quarter? But like he got a sleeper alert. We make it too damn easy. RotoWire notes. We make it too damn easy for everybody, Joe. So that's why the roster construction stuff and the strategy stuff, I think, is really where the edge is, listening to guys like you who I follow at JB Fantasy Sports. I'm at Alan Seslowsky. If you want to help us out right here, all you got to do is hit the like button, leave a comment, that kind of stuff. We answer every single comment, by the way. So if you got some crazy cockamamie trade question, which nobody understands because you wrote too much, we'll answer it. So you can leave those in the comments. We're happy to do that. We answer even the trolls. We answer back. Again, you follow Joe Bartel at JB Fantasy Sports. You listen to him on Saturdays on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio on a podcast feed. And we'll be back next week, everybody, with another Dynasty Fantasy Football